So I just got some breaking news about 5 minutes ago, right before I came on air. Apparently, Facebook has made the decision to keep Trump off of their platform. I don't know how long this decision lasts. I don't know if they're going to revisit it again, but the announcement as of right now, based on limited details, because I haven't had time to go through the articles, because all I've seen is the headlines, because the story just came out. Trump is seemingly permanently off of Facebook. So he's been banned from Twitter. He's been banned from Facebook. And for those of you who don't know, Facebook has this oversight board that they call this independent oversight board, which makes decisions for stuff like this. And it's a way for Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook to try to distance themselves and pretend like there's some amount of objectivity when they make decisions like this. And, you know, I've been critical for a very long time. I think the idea of setting up a ministry of truth, if you will, is incredibly Orwellian. It's definitely authoritarian. I don't care that a private company is doing it. The principle of the thing remains, which is you're giving a group of people the ability to ban at their whim. And so I have to say, I struggle with this decision. I get it, man. I understand. Trump's terrible. Trump's horrible. Trump's a war criminal. Trump did egg on an attempted insurrection. But I do think he spoke out of both sides of his mouth during that whole fiasco. I do think on the one hand, he was like, everybody go home and be peaceful. We love our cops. But the election was definitely stolen, and maybe somebody should do something about this. But you should also totally be peaceful and go home. He spoke out of both sides of his mouth. And so to ban him over this permanently, not sure I buy it. Also, just don't like the precedent that's been set. And you guys know we've talked about this in detail. A good example is on Reddit, they banned the Donald, but then they also banned the Chapo Trap House Reddit. You know, on Twitter, there's been a number of extremists on the right who have been banned, but then there's also been a number of prominent Antifa accounts that have been banned. So in other words, it's a package deal. If you say, I want to get rid of the extremists on the right, then they're going to come for the so-called extremists on the left. And there doesn't have to actually be an equivalence. All there has to be is somebody that would make the argument that there's an equivalence, and then Facebook and Twitter and all the social media companies are going to cave, and they're going to try to have some degree of parity, and they're going to ban people for political ideologies on both sides of the spectrum. And it's a slippery slope of all time, and we're already going down it. And so even though I know a lot of people out there are happy that, you know, hey, Trump's permanently gone, and I get the feeling at a visceral level why you would be happy about that. But in terms of the precedent that's set, it's actually disastrous. And I really think that the solution is to have all the big social media companies regulated like public utilities. And so the First Amendment is expanded into the digital sphere and you have free speech rights. That's what I think the solution is. I know a lot of people out there disagree with me, but unfortunately, this is just the beginning. And I think there's going to be hell of a lot of banning and censoring and deplatforming and all sorts of stuff going on. And Trump wasn't even the real first example. The real first example was Alex Jones. And now you have the former president of the United States who was a fallen victim to this. So it is what it is. And I fear what's going to happen now as time goes by. Now, having said all that, there's another part to this story, which is Trump, in his desperation, was telling the media, hey guys, I'm going to set up my own social media company. So everybody keep your eyes peeled for that, because it's going to be an awesome social media company. You're not going to want to miss this. It's going to be the next big thing. And then we finally, just yesterday, got the launch of this social media site. Let me tell you a little bit about it. This is from Mediaite. They say the following. Former President Donald Trump launched a long-awaited platform on Tuesday to communicate with his followers outside of social media. The platform, which took the appearance of a blog at www.donaldjtrump.com/desk, displayed a number of Twitter-sized messages as of Tuesday afternoon, alongside buttons offering readers the option of sharing them on Twitter and Facebook. A third heart-shaped button, analogous to the like buttons appearing on social media websites, also appeared, though it appeared to lack any functionality as of Tuesday. The page became public the same day that Facebook was expected to announce whether Trump's suspension from that website would be permanent. A source familiar with the situation told Fox News, sorry for the beeping in the background, this laptop is shit. The page became public the same day Facebook was expected to announce whether Trump's suspension for the website would be permanent. A source familiar with the situation told Fox News the new site was intended to facilitate one-way communication, adding, quote, "This system allows Trump to communicate with his followers." So, I need you to understand what went down here. What went down is Donald Trump was like, damn, I got banned from Twitter. I'm getting banned from Facebook. I have very few popular social media sites left to go to, if any. I have to create my own. What he did was, on his own website, created a portion of it called Desk, where he copies the look of Twitter and tries to communicate with his followers. And by communicate, I just mean he barks at them and monologues at them, because it's not a social media site in that people can respond. It's a one-way communication site. It's just him having a blog on his own website. This guy is amazing. The balls on this man, the nerve to he was just flat out lying to the media when he was like, we're going to launch our own social media website. It's going to be tremendous. It's going to be amazing. It's going to be out of this world. All he did was go on his own website and set up a blog and pretended like this is going to be some new big social media thing. And the reason he did that was to try to get as many eyeballs on it as possible, in the hopes that when it launches, people will keep going back and keep looking at whatever the hell he's saying. He basically tried to create his own version of Twitter on his own website for just himself. That is, without a doubt, the saddest thing I've ever heard, and also one of the funniest things I've ever heard. It's so Trumpian. It's more Trumpian than I even thought was capable of Trump himself. You know what this reminds me of? This is random, but this is what popped in my mind as I was reading through this. This reminds me of during the 2016 campaign, when you had interviewers who would bring up his bankruptcies. They would bring him up to his face and ask him various questions about it. And what Trump would do inevitably is he would say, "Wrong. I've never been bankrupt. That's not true. That's fake news. I can't believe you're spreading fake news. This is unacceptable. I dislike what you're saying. I can't believe you do this. Why would you say such a thing? It's terrible. I've never gone bankrupt." And so you hear that, and what do you walk away from the interview believing? His denials were so vehement that you're like, I don't know, maybe he didn't go bankrupt. And it would be dependent on you to do further research to know whether or not it's true that he went bankrupt. You want to know the Weasley thing he was doing? He's technically correct. He personally never went bankrupt, but his businesses went bankrupt at least 6 times. And so when people would ask him the question, they'd be referring to the business bankruptcies, but he would pivot and just say, I've never been bankrupt. So in other words, he's pivoting to personal bankruptcies when really they're asking him about the business bankruptcies, and he'd rather effectively lie and dodge by saying, I've personally never gone bankrupt. And so he's using a technicality to try to weasel out of it. He knows his businesses went bankrupt 6 times. He knows that, but he doesn't want to talk about that. So he just dodges and says, fake news, I never went bankrupt. That's exactly what this reminds me of. Because he told the media, I'm launching my own social media website. It's going to be awesome. You guys got to come check it out. It's going to be the next big thing. It's just a blog on his own website. So he was lying. He knows he was lying, but he tried to hit them with some sort of technicality if people bring it up. I did launch something, and there is some sort of communication on it, and it is kind of like social media, and sure, it happens to be my own website. I'm the only one who could use it, but hey, close enough. It's so Trumpian. It's the most Trumpian thing of all time. But listen, we discussed this on the last show. Bro, what's your end game, dog? What's your end game? He's becoming more and more irrelevant now that he's absent from the public eye. And, you hate to say it, but in a certain sense, deplatforming him worked. And again, I put work like this because I don't think the real question is whether or not it works. That shouldn't be the way you analyze whether or not it's the right thing to do. I think you should make decisions more based off of principle. But like, yes, if the idea was let's limit his reach as much as possible, this definitely worked because he's been absent from the public eye, largely speaking, and his popularity has now plummeted. He's 32% favorable. And for the first time ever, for the first time since 2016, Republicans now identify more with the Republican Party than they do with Trump, whereas before it was the opposite. So this is a desperate attempt to stay relevant. And the most hilarious part is, even given all these things, he'd still be the favorite in the Republican primary if he were to run again. Like, who's going to topple him? Nikki Haley? Ted Cruz? Who's going to topple him? Nobody's going to fucking topple him. So even though he's got all these things against him and he's becoming more and more irrelevant, he's still got a stranglehold on the party, which is amazing. But there you go. The charlatan, con man, fraud is up to his usual charlatan activities, con man activities, and fraud activities.